Hi guys, so in today's video we'll be talking about the wizarding sport Quidditch and more precisely how it started and how it has since evolved into the amazing sport we all know and love. Firstly, for those a bit fuzzy on the subject, I will just quickly summarize what the sport is and isn't. Quidditch is played on an oval shaped pitch that is 500 feet long and 180 feet wide. Each team has 7 players, which consist of 3 chasers, 2 beaters, 1 seeker and 1 keeper. The job of the chasers is to get as many goals with the so-called quaffle as possible. The job of the beaters are to defend the other players on the team against the bludgers, as well as redirect the bludgers towards the enemy team. The bludgers are basically small flying cannonballs on cocaine that will do anything and everything to make any and all players incapable of playing the game. The job of the keeper is to make sure that the enemy team gets as few goals with the quaffle as possible. And lastly, the seeker, which is what Harry Potter was at Hogwarts, and that is the person who tries to catch the golden snitch. The goal of the game is to get as many points as possible before the game ends, and the game ends when the golden snitch has been caught by either team's seeker. The team that catches the snitch will be rewarded an extra 150 points, and a goal of the quaffle will reward the team with only 10 points per goal. This is why modern Quidditch games are a lot more dependent on the seeker than it was earlier, but we'll talk more about that later. This sport is not like football, aka soccer, where you are not allowed to touch your opponent. This sport allows you to hurt and dispose of your opponent, at least to a certain degree. However, this is also one of the things that make Quidditch a subjective sport, because all judges will see the situation differently, so when should a player be punished for his actions and when is it just a part of the game? This kind of sport invites players to push the boundaries of what is allowed and what isn't. Quidditch has been played for almost 1,000 years. Quidditch was inspired by many other magical flying sports, among them a sport where you had to fly through firelit barrels and another where you had a cauldron on your head and rocks would be levitating above. When the game started, you had to fly around and try to catch as many stones as possible in your cauldron as they were falling from the sky. These are just a few among many magical sports that were the inspiration for the sport Quidditch. The name Quidditch came from Quidditch Marsh, which was the name of the place where the first ever recorded game took place. Though this first game was somewhat primal and not really what we would consider Quidditch today. Bludgers were simply 2 big rocks that the players would use to try to knock each other off, and instead of gold rings they used bushes. However, this is nonetheless where the game started, which says a lot about how much it has evolved since then. Over the next years, the game quickly gained popularity among wizards and witches and evolved quickly. The game was practically as we know it today, though equipment was named differently. Quidditch was spelled with a K instead of a Q. The stones from the last game was replaced with what they called blooders, which is what we call bludgers today, and other small details like this. Nonetheless, the game Quidditch had planted its roots and started growing. However, the one thing still missing was the golden snitch. This was introduced in 1269, or at least more or less. It wasn't exactly a golden snitch, but instead a small bird called a snitchet. The snitchet was a very fast, very small bird that could make sudden changes of direction at high speeds. However, at first every player was allowed to catch the snitchet, and if they did so, they would receive a money prize. And more precisely, 150 galleons, which at the time was a lot of money and still is to this day. And as you might imagine, this got all players to abandon their posts. And the way this was fixed was by creating a new position called the Hunter, which is what we know as the Seeker today. They also replaced the money prize with points, and later the snitches were also replaced by the Golden Snitch, and this is due to the fact that when snitches were caught, they were killed. So of course, the snitchet population dropped a lot when Quidditch became popular, and therefore it was replaced with the Golden Snitch instead. Now, a little fun story about the snitchet is that back in 1269 at the first Quidditch game where a snitchet was released promising a reward of 150 galleons to the player who caught it, a witch named Modesty Rapnot, who was also watching the game, took pity on the snitchet and rescued it with a summoning charm before rushing away with it hidden inside her robes. She was caught by a furious group of wizards and fined 10 galleons for disrupting the game, but not before she had released the snitchet. This saved the life of this bird, but the connection with Quidditch had been made, and soon a snitchet was being released at every game. So this is how we got Quidditch. However, we still need to talk about the true evolution of Quidditch and how the meta of the game changed completely. But before we do that, I just want to remind you all to click the like button and consider subscribing to the channel, as I post regularly both shorts and long form content, and I do so multiple times a week. So back on track. A game of Quidditch would last until the Golden Snitch got caught. And since the Golden Snitch is extremely fast, this could often take a long time. Sometimes hours, sometimes days, weeks, or even months. Yes, you heard that right. A game of Quidditch sometimes took months. However, if a game lasted over 12 hours, the team captain of either side could call a timeout lasting up to 2 hours. If the players hadn't returned by then, it would be considered a forfeit. So, as you might imagine, the longer the games were, the less impactful it would be to catch the golden snitch. However, through time the players' equipment and brooms in particular evolved, and with faster brooms it became easier and easier to catch the golden snitch. This meant that over time the Seeker's job became more important because the games didn't last nearly as long as they used to. Now obviously this is quite a change from what we got earlier, since the sport's humble beginning started with no golden snitch at all and pure focus on scoring points with the quaffle. And what we have today means that catching the snitch almost always lets your team win the match, except in rare instances like the championship between Bulgaria and Ireland in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, where Krum got the snitch, but they still lost the game to Ireland because the score was 170-10 before he caught it, and meaning it ended up 170-160 to Ireland. Leading me to my next point. What this evolution also meant was that you had to be more tactical about catching the golden snitch, because since the game ends when you catch the snitch, you don't want to catch it if you're too far behind your opponent's points. However, the evolution of the broom's abilities also meant that the less money you had to use on the newest brooms and upgrades, the harder it would be for you to win. An example of this is in the second Harry Potter movies and or book, where Draco's father Lucius Malfoy buys the whole Slytherin team new Nimbus 2001s, which was the newest and best broom available. This of course put the other teams at a disadvantage, as their brooms were a lot slower, and therefore it made it more difficult to catch the snitch compared to the Slytherins. So guys, do you think the evolution of Quidditch has gone the right way, or has the focus on the snitch become too big? Let me know in the comments, and if you liked the video please do like it and subscribe to the channel, and if that is the case then I'll see you soon. Bye guys.